An incredibly powerful weapon capable of destroying an enemy army without a single shot.
Troops, organized units, turn into an armed mob.
Electronic warfare means have been developing for 100 years. And the further it goes, the influence of electronic warfare on the battlefield grows. The Russian-Ukrainian war has given a new impetus to the development of electronic warfare systems. Drones, airplanes, cruise and ballistic missiles, and even entire armies directly depend on electronics. Whoever controls the waves has the initiative on the battlefield. Electronic warfare, or EW for short, is a kind of combat where instead of bullets and shells, the impact on the enemy is carried out using radio emissions and radio interference, such as jamming and deception.
These are jamming stations. They can be narrowband and broadband. Nowadays, most are made broadband. So, what is this? It's a jamming emitter. There is an antenna with an emitter on it. It emits interference at certain frequencies. For example, in the mobile communication range.
It is believed that on April 2nd, 1904, EW was used for the first time in combat conditions during the Russo-Japanese War. At that time, Russian ships used a radio station to disrupt radio communications between Japanese ships. With the advancement of technology and equipment, EW mechanisms reached a new level. By the start of World War II, the use of radio jamming had become commonplace. For example, EW means played a crucial role during the Allied landings in Normandy in June 1944. Electronic warfare means, combined with disinformation operations, sowed disorientation and panic among the Nazis. In the case of modern combat operations, electronic warfare begins with reconnaissance. The most vulnerable to radio reconnaissance are stationary and large targets, such as enemy headquarters and command posts.
That is, this is radio technical reconnaissance, the first stage of electronic warfare. First, we determine the type of emission, the signal parameters, then the intercepted signal. If possible, the location, the positioning of this signal source, right? And after that, everything is transmitted to the means of destruction.
The targets of electronic warfare operations are important radio-electronic objects, elements of troop and weapon control systems. Using radio means the disruption or failure of which will lead to a decrease in the effectiveness of the enemy's weaponry. In other words, with the help of electronic warfare means, a knockout blow can be delivered to the logistics and the enemy's communications.
They send radio signals through which information is transmitted. If these communications are severed, then the troops, organized units, turn into an armed mob, which is not particularly difficult to deal with. Just like it was during the war in Iraq, a mob and simply American troops. An uncontrollable mob that American troops simply shot at. On the march, in positions, in the rear, anywhere, they shot at troops that had no command, no information, and no support at all.
The targets of radio interference are radio lines, communications, control, guidance, and navigation. Primarily, interference affects the receiving part of radio equipment. Under the influence of electronic warfare, the enemy's troop and weapon control systems, communications, and intelligence either lose the signal entirely or receive it in a distorted form.
Here is a broadband station. It can effectively disrupt both radio communication and mobile communication, and there are separate stations that can jam satellite communication, for instance.
In addition to communication, electronic warfare is used in combating drones, ranging from small FPV to much larger aircraft-type drones. Cruise missiles that use satellite signals. In the case of electronic warfare, these are calibers. And even ballistic missiles. In the case, again, with the occupiers, the GPS signal is used in the North Korean KN-23 ballistic missiles. Under the influence of electronic warfare means Russian missiles are thrown off course and are highly likely not to reach their target.
KN-23, KN-24. They rely solely on GPS for orientation. And all the results of the launches were summed up by February 24th. Yes, so out of all the launched missiles, I think they counted about 40 missiles, of which 2 or 3 fell near the target. All the others fell somewhere. Additional coordinates are fed into the navigation system. and the navigation system itself begins to distort the impact point.
Today, there are a large number of various electronic warfare tools, starting from a simple anti-drone gun capable of jamming a nearby flying drone with a narrow-focused signal.
A directed mini electronic warfare station. It operates on the principle of a magnetron, an emitter for these lectures of electromagnetic waves, which disable the electronics on the poor drone, and effectively.
And ending with massive, huge and expansive systems covering hundreds of meters and even kilometers around.
These are the simplest systems, the so-called trench electronic warfare. There is a range of 150-200 meters. There is a range of 400 kilometers. There is a system that is integrated into a nationwide system and can transmit from complex to complex the signal as they are deployed. And carry out suppression of enemy strike means directly on the route over large areas.
In parallel with offensive means, defense is also developing. Electronic protection is a component of electronic warfare aimed at ensuring the stable operation of electronic means under conditions of intentional radio interference from the enemy. According to Newton's law, every action has its equal and opposite reaction, and therefore electronic warfare means continue to develop, with new models appearing almost every day. Despite the fact that since 2014, Ukraine has significantly improved its positions and capabilities in radio warfare, in the aspect of electronic warfare, Russia has the advantage. Moscow has been paying the greatest attention to the development of the electronic direction in the army for several decades.
A significant indicator was the creation of electronic warfare troops as a separate branch of the military in Russia back in 2009. Currently, the Russian Federation has about 60 types of modern equipment and electronic warfare means in service. The enemy has established serial production of so-called trench electronic warfare means. These are now saturating the tactical level of Russian troops.
In the matter of electronic warfare, the Russians are acting, as they say, scientifically. Kremlin scientists are observing the developments of their Western colleagues as well as potential targets that will need to be countered with modern drones and missiles.
As soon as we started using them in Ukraine, Russia immediately deployed systems that were created, specifically to counteract these shells and ATACMS missiles, and generally missiles have a range of superior impact, like the precision-guided bombs and the HIMARS, which are guided by GPS, such as. And in Russia, there is a huge number of systems designed specifically to distort satellite signals.
That's all for now. Don't forget to write in the comments about which types of weapons you would like to learn more. Like this video and of course subscribe to our new Arsenal channel. The link is in the description below the video.